Welcome to the module on conflict resolution. The learning objectives of this module are to provide a basic understanding to the learner about the concept of conflict in the development sector. Secondly, the learner will understand the causes of conflict and the process involved in conflict situations. Thirdly, the learner will get an understanding on conflict resolution and the techniques involved in conflict resolution. Finally, he or she will get an idea about the role of professionals in conflict resolution. Introduction. Conflict refers to a difference of opinion which disrupts relations between groups. Singer defines conflict as a critical state of tension occasioned by the presence of mutually incompatible tendencies within an organismic whole, the functional continuity or structural integrity of which is thereby threatened. In other words, conflict is a disagreement through which the parties involved perceive a threat to their needs, interests, or concerns. The basis of conflicts. Purposes. For example, freedom and independence versus domination and exploitation. Value-based conflicts. An example is giving incentives is desirable or non-desirable. Needs. For example, security, property. Opinions. Some conflicts are based on opinions like India should or should not bring in FDI. Interests or desires. Opinions can also happen based on interests and desires. For example, two states wanting to control the river water flow. Key concepts in conflict are parties, issues, power relations, and goals. Parties. Here, conflicts are between individuals or between organizations. Issues. In the case of issues, parties are generally joined in conflict due to matters that have significance and meaning to each party. The intensity of the conflict depends on the feeling or attachment to the issues of concern. Power relations. Power distribution and relations are central in understanding conflict. Goals. Parties are in conflict with each other as they contend for competitive objects, values, positions, or issues. The conflict process. The conflict process consists of 5 stages. Stage 1, potential opposition. Stage 2, cognition and personalization. Stage 3, intentions. Stage 4, behavior. And stage 5, outcomes. Stage 1, potential opposition. The presence of conditions necessary for conflicts to arise. These conditions are communication, structure, and personal variables. Communication, or the lack of it, is seen as a major obstacle which creates a level of misunderstanding. The structure of the organization is a possible block as conflicts evolve between departments. Personal variables most often cause conflict as these are invariably clashes in personality types within an organization. Stage 2, cognition and personalization. In this stage, the potential for conflict becomes actualized due to the awareness of the problem and the personalization of the conflict. The conflict issues are defined at this stage in the process, and each party envisions what they believe to be the solution. Stage 3, intentions. Intentions are decisions to act in a given way. These intervene between people's perceptions and emotions and their overt behavior. Using two dimensions, cooperativeness, the degree to which one party attempts to satisfy the other party's interests, and assertiveness, the degree to which one party attempts to satisfy only its concerns. There are 5 conflict handling intentions that can be identified as competing, collaborating, avoiding, accommodating, compromising. Competing, promoting the concerns of one's own group at the expense of the other group. Collaborating, working through differences and seeking solutions so that everyone gains as a result. Third, avoiding, refusing to take an active role in conflict resolution procedures. Accommodating, allowing other groups to satisfy their concerns at the expense of one's own group. Compromising, seeking partial satisfaction of all groups, settling for acceptable rather than optimal resolution. Stage 4, behavior. It is in this stage that the conflict becomes visible through the statements, actions, and reactions made by both the parties. Stage 5, outcomes. The interplay between conflicting parties results in consequences that may be functional or dysfunctional. Functional conflict, which produces positive performance. In such cases, conflicts are healthy, which result in new solutions to problems, new ideas, learnings, growth, and enhanced creativity. Dysfunctional conflict is any confrontation or interaction between parties that harms the organization or hinders the achievement of organizational goals. Outcome of the conflict. According to Nelson and Quick, outcome of the conflict can be classified into 2. Functional outcome, dysfunctional outcome. Functional outcome consists of new ideas, creative, it brings change, promotes vigor, establishes identities. Dysfunctional outcome consists of taking away energy from work, threatening well-being, waste of resources, negative environment, or group disarray. Causes of conflict. Causes of conflict are classified into 2, structural factors and personal factors. Structural factors consist of specialization, interdependence, common resources, goal differences, authority relationships, status inconsistencies, jurisdictional ambiguities. Specialization leads to conflicts because people often are unaware of the tasks others perform and do not understand their importance. Secondly, interdependence, depending on each other for getting work done. This goes well when the process of work proceeds, but if work does not get done, one party can blame the other, which may lead to conflict. Third, common resources. Anytime multiple parties share resources, there is scope for conflict, and this gets escalated when the shared resources are scarce. Goal differences, when groups have different goals, and when these different goals become incompatible, conflicts arise. Authority relationships, when relationships within the groups or organizations are hierarchical, they result in autocratic behavior, which leads to conflict. Status inconsistencies, for example, between the management and non-management workers, where one group enjoys privileges and the others do not. Jurisdictional ambiguities, unclear lines of responsibility within an organization or groups lead to conflict. Personal factors. Personal factors consist of skills and abilities, personalities, perceptions, values and ethics, emotions, communication barriers, cultural differences. Skills and abilities. Diversity in skills and abilities leads to interdependence, which has potential for conflicts in organizations. Experienced people, when asked to work with newcomers, will face difficulty, resulting in difference of opinions. Personalities. Personality traits like abrasiveness, which ignores interpersonal aspects of work. People who are hardworking and perfectionist make others feel unimportant, which creates tension and stress. Perceptions. Difference in perceptions also lead to conflict. Values and ethics. Difference in values can be reason for disagreement. Emotions. Conflict by its nature is an emotional interaction. Problems at home can lead to conflict in organizations and groups. Communication barriers. Distortion of messages due to language, value judgments, distance can also be reasons for conflict. Cultural differences. Often, conflict stems from lack of understanding of another culture and close-mindedness to accept the other culture. Conflict resolution. Conflict resolution in social welfare can be used as a strategy for social work practitioners and students. The difference in beliefs, ideas, principles, policies, departments and agencies needs to be reconciled for effective implementation. There is need for social workers to understand conflict resolution means and techniques to be effective welfare administrators. Conflict resolution studies the phenomenon of conflict and analyzes ways to bring it under control. It brings solutions that have bearing on the conflict. Components of conflict systems to understand conflict resolution. Duration of tension. Duration of conflicts has impact on the level of pressure. Short duration conflicts are easy to tackle. When a conflict persists for longer period, it increases complications. Participants' personality and ideology. Long-lasting conflicts are mostly due to close-minded, rigid personalities. The more open the participants are, the less likely the conflict will prolong. Distribution of power or resources. Conflict is mostly triggered by competition for power, authority, influence, or wanting to control scarce resources. Styles of decision making. Styles of decision making are denying conflict, coercive style, and cooperative style. Denying conflict and therefore not making any decision at all. Deciding coercively what everyone must do, coercive style. This type of decision making is dominating and not inclusive. This will lead to suspicion, enmity, and contempt. This relies on one-way flow and perpetuates privilege and superiority. In this case of decision making, conflict may be resolved through arbitration. Inviting all participants in making the decision is the cooperative style. is based on democracy, tolerance. It allows coexistence and tolerance. Faith and empathy are the base for this kind of decision making. It relies on an open flow of communication, and conflict is resolved through joint problem solving. Techniques of conflict resolution are competing, collaborating, avoiding, accommodating, compromising. Competing is assertive and uncooperative in nature. Collaborating is high on assertiveness and cooperation. It involves openness and thorough discussion on conflict, and then arrives at solutions which make both the parties satisfied. Avoiding is taking no action on a conflict and thus staying out of conflict situations. When parties are angry and instinctive and need time to settle down, it is best to use avoidance. But then, avoiding conflict situation very often may have a negative effect. Accommodating is a style, while other parties' needs are met, but we are unconcerned with getting our way. This is cooperative but not assertive. Compromising is an intermediate style where each party gives up something to reach a solution to the conflict. Uses of conflict resolution techniques: conflict appropriate situations and resolving styles. Uses of conflict resolution techniques according to different situations. Competing is a technique to be used when an action is important, when unpopular actions need to be implemented, when it is vital to the organization, when it has to be used against people who take advantage of non-competitive behaviors. Collaborating is a technique to be used to find inclusive solutions when both parties' concerns are important, to merge different perspectives, to achieve commitment by taking concerns into consensus, to work with feelings which interfere with relationships. Compromising should be done when parties with equal power are in the direction of mutually exclusive goals, when the goals are important but not worth an assertive mode, to achieve a temporary settlement, to get expedient solutions within the time frame, and lastly, as a backup, when collaboration and competition are not successful. Avoiding is used when more important issues need to be dealt with, to give parties time to settle and calm down, when gathering information supersedes immediate decision making, when issues of concern are tangential. Accommodating is a technique to be used to allow better positions to be heard, to learn, to build social credits, to minimize the loss which may have incurred, when harmony and stability are important, and to allow parties to learn from mistakes. Role of professionals in conflict resolution. In solving conflicts in development organizations, professionals like social workers play a major role. These roles are facilitator, healer, mediator, expert, advocate, arbitrator, administrator. Facilitator. As facilitators, there is need to keep the communication channels open among the participants and among other important actors. The facilitator's role is to remove obstacles hindering effective communication between the parties and other actors. Healer. This may require looking at prejudices, historical hatreds, deprivations, suffering, and departing from traditional beliefs and customs, discontinuing behavior that humiliates or suppresses the other group. Mentoring and increasing listening ability among the parties and understanding of the other, and thus cultivating a non-judgmental attitude among the parties. Mediator. This role helps both parties to take note of the demands of all the interest groups. Mediators try to function objectively. Expert. Consultants in a competitive environment perform as non-participant experts. Here the experts do not take part in settling the conflict, but their focus remains on educating the parties on higher levels of understanding in order to reduce quarreling. Advocate. The role of an advocate is to educate the parties and to explain how the system works, how to make choices, and how to learn new skills. Arbitrator. When the conflict becomes polarized, that requires a clearly directive role of the arbitrator. When the parties cannot resolve issues by themselves but do not wish to resort to violence. Administrator. To make the terms of agreement operational and monitor each phase of development and avoid further misunderstandings. Summary of the module. In this module, we discussed the concept of conflict situations in the development sector and its causes. We also discussed about the process involved in conflict situations and the outcome of the conflict. In the latter phase of this module, we discussed the concept of conflict resolution and its techniques. Finally, we also discussed how a professional, for example, social worker, can help in conflict resolution. Thank you for attending this session.